And I will begin, as I said, with this presentation that explains the open peer review process from the perspective of editors. And just to recap, I will begin by making clear the motivation for implementing this, conceptualizing and implementing this open peer review process, which first and foremost is to increase the transparency of the publication process for everyone who reads the journal, and also just for the scientists who are in the same field. Also, we also want to improve the peer review quality, so the fact that it's an open peer review should serve as a motivation for all those participating in it to really focus on having a lot of constructive feedback and just a respectful tone of voice. And this really should also further than an open scientific discussion. And this open scientific discussion is, of course, between the editors, reviewers, and authors. But the fact that we open the peer review process up, it will happen alongside an engaged community who are also invited to submit their comments to preprints, publications that are in the process of being discussed and subsequently published. I'll now start to introduce the dramatis personae of this peer review process. We have the authors, the managing editors, topical editors. This is you as participants in the editorial board, the reviewers, and then the wider community, the choir of this drama, so to say. I'll set the scene here. We have two platforms. This is important for now. You have probably mainly seen ing.grid.org, which is the main journal website, and this is linked together with the preprints platform, preprints.ing.grid.org. And to treat the thematic material, I want to recap the submission types that we have. So I've shown this pyramid plenty of times with the building blocks, but just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, we have the manuscript submission, which requires a written document, which is the main focus of the submission type, and optional supplementary material for data sets and software repositories that can be linked. Then the software submission, in this case, the software repository is the main submission, but to be able to process it in the journal, we need a software descriptor, so a text document that is submitted to ing.grid and linked then with the software, and the data set as optional material. And correspondingly with the data submission, the data set in a repository is the main submission, and the data descriptor is submitted to ing.grid with a related software package linked optionally. So as a summary, we can see here we have the three submission types. We have mandatory material for each of the submission types and optional material that may also be submitted. I want to give an overview of the timeline of the submission, and I've highlighted here the parts or the times in which you as topical editors have to become active. And around this, we have other characters in this that perform their own tasks. So we have it all starts with the submission by the authors, and then the managing editors become active with a formal proofing, after which then the submission is assigned to a topical editor whose field the submission is from, and here we have to prove, the topical editors have to prove the content, publish the preprint, and invite review comments, and then moderate this process between reviewers who submit their comments, the authors who respond, and also rounds of revision that are conducted. And here it's important to moderate the comments and inform authors about decisions, and just in general make this peer review moderated and to make it transparent. And after a final decision is made, if the publication or the submission is accepted, then it passes from you as topical editors back to the managing editors, who then, in an interplay with the authors, copy edit and typeset and then publish the article. So we estimate if everything runs extremely smoothly, 18 weeks from submission to publication. Now, looking at our stage, we turn our attention to the left-hand side, the preprints section, and this is where the peer review process, the open peer review process, takes place. I will go through this bit by bit with flow charts to indicate the process of each of the sections in more detail. So we begin with a new submission, and the managing editors check whether the submission is in the scope and whether the formal requirements outlined in the author guidelines are fulfilled. If this does not apply, then this ends in a rejection. If it does apply, then the topical editor gets assigned, and the topical editor becomes active, checking whether the submission shows novelty, utility, whether it's overall interesting for ing.grid. And if this is not the case, this may also end in rejection. If the submission is interesting, the topical editor will publish this on the preprint server and invite reviewers to comment. So after this first step of initial proofing, after this is completed, we have a preprint publication with the manuscript or descriptor, links to the material, and metadata also captured. So we then continue from having invited the reviewers to comment. The reviewers must then get active and review the submission and submit their review comments. This moderating of the review process that I've mentioned before then takes the form of this decision that the topical editors check whether the comment whether it's polite and constructive feedback, and whether it is in line with the code of conduct and the publication ethics. If this is not the case, all the topical editors can request revisions of the review comments, after which the reviewers have to revise their comments, and this process is done iteratively until this question can be answered with yes, and then the review comment gets published. As a side note, this is similar for author comments. So when authors respond to the reviewer comments, topical editors should also check whether the overall tone is friendly, polite, and furthers this goal of an open scientific discussion that the community engages in with goodwill. So then when the author comments are published, or reverting back to the publishing of the review comments, the topical editors have to make a decision. Should the submission be rejected, depending on the recommendations of the reviewers and also their own assessment. If it is not rejected, topical editors have to check whether the submission requires revision. Since this is usually the case, we will look at this branch, the decision first. Revision, the topical editors request revisions from the authors, who make those requested revisions and upload a new version of their manuscript or descriptor. And then, of course, topical editors have to check whether the submission still shows its utility and novelty. And if this is the case, it gets published on the preprint server again, and reviewers are invited to check whether their submission, whether their concerns have been addressed. And then we pass on to this module of the peer review that I have shown before, and end up at the right at the top of this flow chart again. And this is done iteratively again, of course, until the submission requires no more revisions, and then topical editors ask authors to upload the entire LaTeX project, which the authors do then. And essentially, this is as far as the responsibilities of the topical editors go. There's one more side note that I would like to mention here, and this is the community comments, and they work in the same iterative way as the review and author comments, of course. And this is what I indicated earlier by saying all editors have to moderate the review process for the submissions. So to summarize, at the end of this review process, we have a preprint publication with the 3 entities of the publication and the metadata and the comments on the preprint platform from reviewers, editors, authors, and the community. For illustrating the complete process, I'll proceed now to show how this process continues until we have a full submission on the journal website, but this is really the responsibility of the managing editors. So we ended up before with uploading the LaTeX project by the authors onto the preprint site still, and then the managing editors send this submission from the preprint platform to the back end of the journal website, indicated by the colors here. And then the copy editing process is performed and the authors clear the publication for publishing, and then the typesetting is organized, and finally the submission is published on the website as a full peer-reviewed paper. And this is how our stage then looks at the end of it. We have the full article on the journal website, a link to the preprint to show the history and review process of it. And at this stage, there is it's not foreseen that there is a direct link from the preprint to the article, but this may be added in the comments then of, say, the managing editors when they indicate that the peer review process has been concluded and that the full peer-reviewed article is available on the journal website. So to summarize, again, the responsibilities of you as topical editors of this public peer review process, it's an initial proofing, finding and assigning reviewers, and then most importantly, moderating comments according to the Code of Conduct and Publication Ethics. You do also have to take care of timekeeping in the review process, and just keeping a general overview of the submission through the peer review process. And I hope with this to have given you a bit of an overview of how the process is conceived and how it works and the different steps involved. And yeah, I will give room for questions, and then we will look at the user interface of the journal